If I was to describe a sunset, that's what I'd do. Explain it as it was without exaggerating the purples and blues. When I'm asked to describe how I am to you, I explain it from the most twisted and distorted view. No matter how many compliments or likes and comments I get, it will never be enough for the confidence to set. No matter how many pats on the back I receive, these blinders on me will always block what I can see. The day that I could describe myself as I would a sunset will be the day I make peace with myself, something I haven't done yet. And that is a poem from Stephen Youngblood, which I actually received in a Weet-Bix box. So if you remember, sometimes you go buy the Weet-Bix and then you go under, you get players cards, so different All Blacks, different Super Rugby players. But today I got that from the man Stephen Youngblood, who single-handedly was responsible for the lowering of pear prices in the Chatham Islands, as well as single-handedly writing, producing, making the props and doing everything for the hit screenplay Who's Your Daddy, which came out in 1976. So an absolute alien of a being. And the day that we can describe ourselves as we would a sunset, or the day that we can, just display our beauty without having to exaggerate any aspect of it to everyone else, and where we see it as it is and take it for what it is and love it. That will be the day that we are all set free, and the day that we can properly be compassionate to everyone else, because we understand within ourselves that we are true beauty. And now that comes off quite esoteric, and a lot of you will probably switch off, because starting off, what the heck is this, a poem? What this guy's gone crazy. He starts doing yoga for 3 months now, and now he wants to be talking about this stuff. But that's just what happens when you spend a little bit more time with yourself and more time with your thoughts. The last couple of weeks I've been, moving up to 30 to 40 to 45 minutes, and I did an hour yoga quite recently, and a lot of it is just really being in touch with how you feel. And I'm not talking just like feelings, because obviously you get time to do that, but just how your body feels. You stretch into very uncomfortable positions, and there's a bit of suffering that goes on, and just your willingness to acknowledge it, and then know that it's going to be good for you. And there's that intensity when you focus on it, but the faster you focus on it, and the more you set up those processes to be able to get through it, and understanding that if you assign this meaning with this pain, so this meaning because we're going through it, it's like when you go to the gym, you're working out, and most times you're hurting, and if you're not working out, you're just going to be like, ow, oh, that's not good. But because we've assigned the meaning of getting better to it, it's something that's worth it. So I'm not going to praise all suffering, but what I'm going to say is there are times where we need to, take that time to really reflect and have those reflections. And speaking of reflections, poor segue there, I'm just going to play a little clip for you, play a little sound, and just see if any of you can dissect what might be going on here in this huge battle of behavioral science. Oh, wow. So just in case you missed that, I'm going to play it one more time, and let's see if we can really dive deep into what is going on here. Oh, wow. So as I was going through trying to find a new gym playlist, what I found was an old CD. The ones that a CD, for those of you who don't know, it's a compact disc, and basically what happens on it is that you can get different music or different sounds, and it's assorted. And what I had was an assorted that's now 2000 from early hits from the 2000s, and that was on there. So just it was nice to take me back to those days. But in all seriousness, I didn't want to give too much credence to it, because it's something that's just kind of blocking our newsways, and it was quite funny that it came out after I had Mitch Kelly on the podcast, and Mitch was talking about, becoming one of the most brutal MMA fighters, and what he does for a living is just beat people up in a cage in a controlled environment, and how now other things don't distract him as much. So I'm not going to give too many of my thoughts on that, because my 3 listeners will probably then start to blow up TMZ and everything like that. But all I can say is, it's just, there are just some things where if you're not, if you feel like you live in a world where there's no consequences, it's easy to act like that and just feel like you're on top of everything. So anyway, time to get into the episode. We have digressed quite a bit, and what we're going to talk about today is building on everything that we have been building on, so less about the feelings, but still all about the feelings, and that's what we're here about. And you where to find me. We here. Sweet. So something that I've always been a huge proponent of, and it's ever since I got Instagram, ever since I started sharing a little bit more about my journey and everything that I'm about, and it's just understanding the process and, really actually falling in love with the process. And we'll just talk around, when people say trust the process, and when people, what does the process actually look like, and what are the benefits of actually looking at the process as opposed to looking at the outcome. Now, there's a lot of books that have been coming out about behavioral change, the biggest one being Atomic Habits. And Atomic Habits, if you listen maybe 2 years ago, we did an episode on our top 3 books, and I had Atomic Habits in there. And basically what it is it's setting up those processes so that you can start to live a life or build a habit that you actually can carry on for the rest of your life. And now I've said this multiple times, but many people who will describe me as one of the best habit people. It's actually to my detriment sometimes because I'm not very good at spontaneity. So that's something that I've been trying to work into my everyday now, is just a little bit of spontaneity, whether that just be, going for a coffee with someone, or listening to my body a little bit more. So maybe, just going off the cuff sometimes if I have to. And I'm getting better at it, and I can say that it used to cause me a lot of anxiety when I wouldn't know how to deal with it. So like, say something came up and it got in the way of my routine, being able to move around, it took a very long time, but I'm getting slightly better with that. And I think it's just because I realized that, we're multifaceted, and there are multiple things that can contribute to you still having a very, very, very good day. So even though I ask the question to all of my guests, what is something that you do every day or close to every day? A lot of them have just been really open and saying, if I can do it maybe a couple of times a week. So that's something that I'm getting better at. But yeah, let's just focus on the process of becoming. So what I want to look at over a long period of time, or over this next couple of episodes of solo episodes, is actually how do we become the person we want to be. And I don't want to sound like a mindset coach, because that's not what I am, but it's just a lot of things that maybe put all of this into context for me. So my understanding as a Cook Islands Māori slash Māori tāne who grew up in Aotearoa and lived in the Cook Islands, and just, why the process for me is so important. So the first one is why I actually got thinking about this episode is we were at rugby training, and we went into these different drills, and we have so many different coaches who are really, really good at breaking down different things and explaining things in different ways. And what I found was when we would go into contact drills, just to make sure that there was a lot of safety, because obviously when it comes to contact and people are moving fast, there's a real high likelihood that someone could get hurt, injured, or you could accidentally hurt yourself. So what he would do was he would come around and he would tell us what's the outcome. And then this is the outcome, is that we want to clear this person out of the ball. Now, sorry to use a sports analogy, but then what he would do with us is that he would break it down. He's like, what are 3 points of contact, not literal contact, but what are 3 things that you want to do as part of that? What are your micro goals and part of that? So like, you just, A, I want to do this, B, I want to do this, C, I want to do this. And what does the step-by-step look like? And then we broke it down, we went through slow, and then we just built up the tempo, and then we went live. And then once he said, okay, go live now, boys, we just went in and we just focused on those 3 points. We didn't focus too much on what the end outcome was going to look like, because we knew we would achieve it if we just went through these steps. That's called trusting the process. One of the most infuriating things that people could do is say, trust the process. And it was huge on Instagram. It was just people who would say, it almost became akin to saying, it is what it is, where people would say, trust the process as a more, I'm manifesting goodness, rather than just like, you actually have no idea what's going to happen. You're just hoping, you're hitting and hoping. But what trusting the process is it's actually having steps in place that are going to happen. And even though it may not look like you're achieving your outcome just yet, you know that these are the most significant steps to actually getting you to where you want to be. So that was like a live version of what trusting the process is going through your steps. What are your key roles? What are the main things that you need to do? And then you know that this will achieve the outcome. If you focus too much on the outcome, it's really easy to lose where you are on your way there. I mean, that one's easy because we know that that's going to happen within 10 seconds. But what about when your goal is going to come like 6 months away or 2 years away? The first thing I'll tell you is that no one's focusing on 6 months or 2 years away. And that's why focusing on the process is going to be very, very important when it comes to looking at long term. So in terms of creation narratives and understanding who we are and understanding, just everything over a long period of time, we're always in this realm of becoming more. We're always in this realm of, having potential to do more, depending on how it is that we act on it. So if any of you know physics, or if any of you know like really basic stuff, turning potential energy into kinetic energy. So potential energy is everything that it could be, and then kinetic energy is like the manifestation or the actual movement of that potential energy. But just focusing on the process of becoming, so the creation narratives, everything that we are has been a long process, and we are interweaved with everything else. And the more that I'm speaking, the more I'm starting to feel like you're going to be like, this guy thinks he's a spiritual guru and all that sort of stuff. But I just think in terms of my upbringing, a lot of it is in terms of spirituality, our connection to environment as well as our connection to other people. And I think the part of that process is just understanding that when we think about who we want to become, we only think about who we are to us. Growing up in terms of creation narratives and understanding my worldview, we think generationally, we think intergenerationally. So what I do now, I know is going to have a significant impact on those who come after me, and then those who were before me also are going to build in to what we do now. So if any of you have been going to counseling, and maybe some of you aren't really too aware of, Māori worldview, a lot of the problems that you end up coming back down to are intergenerational trauma that has been carried on through your family. And then it kind of has and this is why when I was speaking with Artie, a lot of it is it stops with you. So if we start to realize these sorts of things, we can start to go forward. So in terms of why this is important, in terms of who we're related to, so the first human, or if we think about this from a Māori worldview, we were created from the earth, as well as water from Tangaroa, and we are the sun. So if you think about, Adam and Eve, and that's the most, I guess, in the Western world, that's the parallel that we draw. So we are the first children of Tāne Mahuta, and that comes from, we are literally ancestors, well, our ancestors are literally Papa Tuanuku and Ranginui, so the Sky Father and the Earth Mother, because their child was Tāne Mahuta, who then gave birth to the first human, who then after that gave all of us. So we're all related, we're all interconnected, but we're also interweaved with the earth, because we came from the earth, we came from the soil that then made us. So that already gives us our spiritual bonding to the rest of the world. This is how I've understood the world growing up, and then we know that every iteration after that is going to have an effect on the different things. So I'll talk long term for a second, and this is something that made a little bit more sense when I was talking to someone. I was actually talking to my friend Jermaine, and he's now a doctor, he's got a job, he's making money, and then we were actually talking about the difference between someone or people like us who come from pretty low, I don't want to say in terms of wealth. We didn't have inherited wealth, that's the easiest way to say it. So our salaries actually go towards paying off the different things that most people's parents would have done for them. And I'm not saying that my parents didn't do enough for me, but inherited wealth versus just actually getting money in a job is why I'm not driving a BMW, even though someone who has the same salary as me could probably afford to do that, because I have to pay off all the other things. I had to pay for my rent as I was coming through, I had to pay off all my travel, I had to buy my car, I had to do all of that, and I'm not being ungrateful. I'm actually grateful for that opportunity and for the fact that I actually had to understand how to use my money and how to be able to budget that, because I didn't have anything to fall back on. So if something had gone awry, which it did a few times when I was going through my degree, where I literally felt like I'd have to drop out of uni because, I didn't know how I was going to be able to sustain myself, most people would go to their parents, or most people would go to some sort of family person who can correct that. I didn't have that option, so I had to go I had to really just dig it in and get more jobs. And now that has a cascading effect, because if we want more people to become more educated, but we can't actually afford it, we can't just be working all these jobs trying to look after family and then go in and get your education. So there are more than meets the eye, just like Transformers. So there are all of these different interplaying factors which come in, and that is generational. That's stuff that comes in years after years, from my koro to my parents to me, and then hopefully to my children, because we've realized this and we've started to put the steps in place. So these processes, we can now start looking forward and actually changing that. So the intergenerational stuff. So if we think in terms of identity and who we are and the trauma that we're going to have, I think we have inherited wealth, but then we also have inherited trauma. So a lot of the family stuff that you hear when you go to different things, but also one of the things that people still really don't understand, and I hope if you listen to this, you can start to see why it is that some Māori are the way that they are, or why we have trust issues, or why we had excessive alcohol abuse, or why we had, people who mirrored behaviors, and then we would laugh at it and would make a joke about it instead of actually checking in to see what it was that was going on here. So this is all the part of the process of becoming, because we are becoming who we are, but all of these steps actually play a part. And I'm sure there's some sort of epigenetic factor where that trauma is then given to someone else. I shouldn't talk scientific terms, but I do believe that it has to do with that spiritual side, so that life force and that aspect of your life force, or that broken part of your life force, or maybe some sort of there's a question, or there is an action or a call to action that is from your Māori or your life force that goes into the next generation, and it's all on us to build up and to be able to properly build up so that we can get some sort of rectification of it, or maybe some sort of just being able to be at peace with something without actually curling over and saying that's okay. Am I coming across a bit too harsh? Maybe. But these are things that have been mulling in my mind for a long time, especially as I'm starting to explain the importance of why it is that we need different things. So when we talk about equity. So my biggest one is literally, if you think about my koro spoke Māori. He went to school, and then we had different law. Imagine having a law, or imagine having something that told you, if you come into the space and speak your native tongue, which is an official language and has been an official language of this country, will beat you, and you'll be beaten and you'll be punished. So you start to have an identity crisis, because when you come, you go home, you speak English because that's what you're speaking at school. Then your parents are like, "What the heck are you doing? Like that's not you. Speak Māori." And then you go back to school and you're speaking Māori because you're at home, you're speaking Māori, and then you get beat up again. So you almost have to question your identity. And this is what I was talking about, last week with the self-care movement, 2 weeks ago with the self-care movement. We can't just take this off, right? This is stuff that has been entrenched in us for very long periods of time, like generationally. And then you think about that. So why are those sorts of things happening? What's actually being done about it? Do we laugh and be like, stupid Maoris, we told them not to speak this language? Or do we actually feel a sense of, this is not right? I bet no one did, because when he would tell me the story that actually really broke my heart was that he saw, some of his Māori friends who came back, who were fighting in the war in the Māori battalion, and they fought with their friends. They would go to the pub, and they had to sit outside, right? They couldn't sit in the pub because they're Māori. And they just fought a freaking war together. So their friends were passing beers out the window as they sat outside. And we just happily went along with it. And there were a lot of people, especially my father was one of these, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling this. Actually, it's going to be in a documentary. But then also my grandfather, my koro, they changed their names. So their names are Peihana, and they changed their names to Bay because they wanted to fit in. They wanted people to be able to say their names. I am saying that this has huge ramifications on who we are as people and having to re-identify ourselves. So that's all part of the process. When we look at a tree, right, that was a seed that was picked up by some bird somewhere, which was pooped, and then millions of rivers of particles and stuff all make that tree. Everything has some sort of interconnection to other things. And what I'm saying is now we're at a place where a lot of our hurt actually comes from intergenerational stuff. So being able to identify these sorts of things all make sense in the future. So why we like this. And then when we think about these people feeling like they don't belong, these people feeling like if I act the way that I was born to act, if I act the way that I've been conditioned to act this whole time, I'm actually going to be punished for it. So we start looking at excessive alcohol use. We start looking at, domestic violence and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying that this is okay. But there's kind of two ways of going about it. There's the first, which is you mimic those of the people, you mimic those who are the oppressors or the people who start to make you feel unwanted because you're feeling like if I can just act like that, maybe I'll fit in. Or secondly, you just go as far away, so like these were things that I would say to myself when I was younger, I won't be like my parents because they couldn't give me this, this, and this. But we're in a place now where I'm so privileged and I can have these opportunities to have these reflections. And they're super heavy reflections. I'm not there's probably some of you listening who just really can't get your head around it and can't grasp it. And I'm probably speaking really fast because I'm having difficulty grasping it. But it's all starting to make sense, in terms of who we are becoming, in terms of the process that makes us who we are. That's why when we see people at a starting line and when we see people at the finish, we all start at different stages. And it depends, obviously contextually, it's going to be very different depending on what it is the goal is that we're going for. But when we look at statistics and when we look at statistics and we look at interpretations of statistics, it's very easy just to say Māori and Pacific this. We have health inequities because of this. But no one ever looks at the intergenerational, everyone looks at the intergenerational stuff, but then we barely get any consensus where people actually agree that it is because of colonization, it is because of these people bringing their way of living onto these people. And then from here, having people who just do not believe that they should get any special consideration. And it's not special consideration. It is a right as a person who had everything stolen from them because of a misinterpretation of a text when it all came together. So that's the hardcore take. But this is something else that we should think about as well. So we're talking about all those inheritance, and we're talking about the process of becoming as well. If we focus too much on the outcome, that was just me setting the context for why things aren't as they seem and why you need to look at the process to understand why the outcomes are the way that they are. It's just something that we do in statistics because we build up a lot of assumptions so that when we do make rules, we base it on these premises. So now, the next one, and this is probably something that's a little bit more in tune with a lot of you, is just, when we think about transformations now, gosh, everyone is so damn quick to look at the very quick outcomes. So how can I do something in 6 weeks, 10 weeks, or how can I get something next week? If you think about that, what is it that you actually learn over the time? When we think about the process of going through all of this, are you actually picking anything up as part of the process? Falling in love with the process is actually going to make sure that you don't feel like you are a failure at the end of it all. Because if you only focus on the outcome can shift depending on so many different things. But the process of making you who you are, that's what builds into your overall DNA for a long period of time. So over a 6-week period, if all you're doing is dropping all your food and you're not actually learning anything along the way, and you're just doing this so that you focus on your weight going down, you're not actually going to learn anything. And if you focus on the outcome and you don't achieve that outcome, which I'm saying some of you will, some of you definitely will, but then the problem is you don't remember what it was that actually got you there, and you only remember some things of that. But if we are to focus on what it is that we can learn through that process, regardless of if you hit your outcomes or not, if you're consistently showing up and doing all of these things over a long period of time, even if it's like 60%, but it's 60% more than the person who just gave up, then you're going to have a really, really good outcome. So focusing on that process is you starting to build lifestyle habits and you starting to build lifestyle change. And these are things that I probably come on and talk about multiple times. And just really, really quickly, it is April now, which means that 2 years ago we started the Sick As podcast, and it means that officially over 1 year of going solo on the podcast, and that's something that I haven't addressed yet, and that's just really cool. A lot of podcasts only really go for the first maybe 10 or so episodes, but here we are still standing. So we've had, my thoughts have been everywhere about how to try to put this together, but in terms of the process, it's thinking about why my thoughts work the way that they do when it comes to understanding longevity and understanding behavioral change over a long period of time. It's because you can understand the nuance of the different things that make people the way that they are. So if these people only have this sort of outlook on life, this is why they act in this certain way. But if you cast your mind over the different things and you just think about the connotations of different things, so like people who have excessive alcohol abuse, instead of laughing and being like, haha, he's funny because he drinks a lot, start breaking down, is this actually an issue? Is this something that's unresolved? And that's why they're jumping into these sorts of habits. So that's why the process is very, very important. But also, this is where it comes into it, and this is where I believe, my life and my service to people comes in, is because I believe that there are intergenerational things that I can do because I've started to see it. And I'm not saying that I'm a saint. I'm not saying that I'm going to be the person who just changes the world. but like maybe I do something that for one person makes their life a little bit easier. So what I've been doing is reaching out to a few more people and trying to be a little bit more kind, but also just giving time to people, because what I've started to realize is focusing on my life by myself is only good to a certain extent. But if you can't share that sort of stuff with people, or you can't let other people share that with you, it's quite lonely, and it gets to a point where you're like, why am I even doing this? But what I believe, and this came after watching Holes. If any of you, sorry, I might give it away, but it's a really old movie, so it's your fault if you haven't seen it. Stanley Yelnats and Hector Zeroni. They are intergenerational, like they've been displaced from each other. So if you think about, like what happens is there was a great-great-grandmother and a great-great-grandfather, and basically there was an injustice that happened at this level. You go a few generations later, and they've just had rotten luck, bad luck, nothing good is happening, and then the younger Stanley Yelnats and Hector Zeroni, who is a descendant of, so they're two descendants who then cross paths again of generations before, and then they fulfill exactly what was happening. So am I going to say, fulfill exactly what was meant to happen all those generations ago? Am I meant to say that I cast all of this entire episode off Holes? Maybe. No. I just thought that was a really good example of how we carry these things intergenerationally, and then after that point, we can actually build a proper foundation to be able to build up to becoming who we are. But unless you understand the process, you don't know where things go wrong. So you can have mechanistic breakdowns, but then you can also have, just overall, maybe overwhelming thoughts, because you're just like, I'm doing all of these different things, but maybe we're not addressing the proper things that we should be addressing. This is very wishy-washy, but these are things that I want you to consider, and I hope that over the next couple of solo episodes, we start to see why our emotions come the way that they do. So I'm trying to break down a little bit more of why I get angry, and a little bit more of how to get better at being angry. So I've already done episodes on that, but I want to go even deeper. Why is it that these things come up? And this is for all my people who don't have these times to reflect. Maybe by hearing me reflect on it and speak about it, you're also going to have these reflections as well. So just one thing that I wanted to do is just acknowledge that I've hurt people because I've been hurt people, and over time I've hurt a lot of people. I was super self-absorbed, and I was only thinking that I was the only one who was struggling, and I didn't believe that other people would struggle as much as me. So I'm understanding that it's all part of that process, and it doesn't mean that you can't be a good person now. It doesn't mean that is you. We do have to acknowledge that we did kind of undertake those actions, but it doesn't mean that that's the only way that you can be. And that's something that I've come to grips with, and being able to acknowledge it, speak about it, and then say, but I don't want to be like that anymore. So I've got a freak out challenge, something that I want. So this is when I talk about challenges, I'm not talking about next week we're going to be ripped and we're going to have a new greens product for you all, but I just want you to spread some sort of generosity. So generosity, whether that be, instead of buying something for someone, actually give someone a piece of you. No, don't cut off a limb or something, but be there with someone. If you're going to go buy them a meal, don't just do it because you're trying to be, and then you're sitting there on your phone the whole time. Give all of you in that moment. Sit there, listen to someone. Don't meet up with someone just because you want to talk. Go and meet up with someone because you think like they've crossed your mind, and you're like, oh shit, I should probably go meet up with them and listen to them. Maybe they haven't been able to speak with someone, and they'll very, very, very much appreciate it. You might be thinking, oh gosh, that's a lot of time. It's really inconvenient to me. But you always feel better after that. You'll always feel better. There will never be a time where you do something kind for someone and then you feel like, what a fucking waste of time, right? And you never know. You might be five generous acts away from waking up and just having, walking into a new incarnation or getting proper karma. But don't do it for all those different things. But just do it because you know that there are people out there who will absolutely benefit from this sorts of things. And once you've listened to this and you've been like, wait, hold on, so this challenge is just to be a really nice person? Yeah. But not enough of us do it, because a lot of us think that we're caught up, a lot of us think that we're busy, and we're busy being busy. Maybe so that we can avoid those parts of ourselves that actually feel like there's an empty void. But part of that void, I believe, could actually be built up by actually, just spreading some sort of generosity. And like I said, you never know. You might wake up, you might give your 5th act of generosity. You could be 3.5 acts of generosity away, and you could wake up out of your cocoon with new butterfly wings. I just want to say that. I just want to say that. And if it doesn't work, so what? What are you going to do? You're going to put me in a rear naked choke? You're going to fight me? I've got Mitch Kelly on my side. I'll slap you harder than Will Smith. But no, I mean, it's not like it's not gonna make anything worse, right? That little bit of generosity that you can give is gonna make a huge difference to whoever ends up coming and getting that. And that's all part of the process. It's all understanding why it is that we are doing these different things. But also, final thing, please, if you're gonna do something kind for someone, don't video it. Don't write on your freaking Facebook status that I did this thing. Just do it, okay? There are a lot of things that I've done, and I just love doing it. I feel it, and I don't need to share it with the world. So if you're properly going to do this, you can let me know. You can let me know for sure. But just do it. Just do it and see how you feel. And like I said, if it doesn't work, fight me. I'll give you my address. Anyway, have a great week. Love you all.